History is usually written by the victors, or in case of the Cold War, by the superpowers who watched from afar. But the truth of a conflict is rarely found in the sanitized archives of Washington or London. To understand the genesis of the 1971 war, you cannot rely on the geopolitical chessboard of the West. You have to look at the soil. You have to listen to the distressed border logs, the diaries of the displaced, and the primary records of the people who lived in the crosshairs of a geographical anomaly. Long before the American and British aircraft carriers set sail, before the Soviet nuclear submarines surfaced in the Bay of Bengal, and before the Indian military machine roared to life, there was a quiet, systemic erasure of a people. This is the story of a nation born fundamentally fractured, attempting to hold together an impossible union. This is how the breaking of Pakistan began, not with a sudden declaration of war, but with a slow, suffocating grip on the identity of 70 million citizens. In August of 1947, a stroke of a pen in London fractured the Indian subcontinent. The British Empire retreated, leaving behind a hastily drawn border that birthed a geographical impossibility. A single nation, Pakistan, was created in two halves. West Pakistan and East Pakistan were separated by over 1,000 miles of Indian territory. It was an unprecedented cartographic experiment. The foundational logic of this new state rested on a single fragile pillar, the shared religion of Islam. The architects of partition believed that faith alone was strong enough to bridge the massive chasm of geography, culture, and history. But a nation is rarely sustained by faith alone. The people of the West, primarily Punjabis, Sindhis, Pashtuns, and Baloch, lived in an arid continental climate, steeped in Middle Eastern and Central Asian cultural influences. The people of the East were Bengalis. They belonged to the largest river delta in the world, a lush, monsoon-drenched land with a rich, ancient literary and cultural heritage that predated the arrival of Islam. From the very first day of independence, the center of gravity was pulled forcefully to the west. The capital was established in Karachi and later moved to Islamabad. The military headquarters, the financial institutions, the supreme courts, the entire apparatus of state power was consolidated 1,000 miles away from the majority of the country's population. East Pakistan, despite holding over 55% of the nation's citizens, awoke to find itself relegated to the periphery. The distance between the two wings was not just measured in miles, but in an immediate profound imbalance of power. The first cracks in the Union did not appear over borders or military budgets. They appeared over the spoken word. To consolidate national identity, the ruling elite in West Pakistan sought a single unifying language. In March 1948, the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, addressed a massive crowd in Dhaka. He declared that Urdu and only Urdu would be the state language. For the Bengalis, this was a cultural shockwave. Urdu was the mother tongue of roughly 7% of the nation's population, mostly migrants from northern India who had settled in the West. Bengali was the language of the absolute majority. To relegate Bengali to a secondary status was not just an insult to a 1,000-year-old literary tradition, it was a deliberate mechanism of disenfranchisement. If you could not speak the language of the state, you could not hold government office, serve as an officer in the military, or access higher education. The simmering resentment boiled over 4 years later. On February 21, 1952, students at Dhaka University defied a government ban on public gatherings to protest the language policy. The state responded with lethal force. Armed police opened fire on the unarmed students. Men like Abdus Salam, Rafiq Uddin Ahmad, Abul Barkat, and Abdul Jabbar were killed on the street of their own university. This was the Ekushe February, the 21st of February. It was the moment the illusion of the absolute Islamic Brotherhood shattered. Blood had been spilled not against an external enemy, but by the state against its own citizens over the fundamental right to speak their mother tongue. The Bengali Language Movement planted a seed of secular, ethno-linguistic nationalism that the state of Pakistan would never be able to uproot. While language ignited the cultural fire, it was the cold, hard mathematics of economics that fueled the growing separatist sentiment. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, a stark reality set in. East Pakistan was being treated not as an equal partner, but as an internal colony. East Pakistan was the economic engine of the country. The fertile delta produced the vast majority of the nation's cash crops, most notably jute, the golden fiber highly sought after in global markets. In the first decade of independence, exports from the East generated nearly 70% of Pakistan's foreign exchange earnings. Yet, the wealth did not stay in the delta. The revenue generated by the sweat of Bengali farmers was systematically funneled westward to fund the rapid industrialization of Karachi and Lahore, and to build a massive modernized military apparatus positioned almost entirely in West Pakistan. By the mid 1960s, economists formalized this as the two economies theory. While the West experienced a booming decade of development, the East suffered chronic underinvestment in infrastructure, healthcare, and education. The disparity extended to human capital. The powerful civil bureaucracy and the military officer corps were heavily dominated by West Pakistanis. A Bengali entering a government office in Dhaka would likely find a West Pakistani sitting behind the desk, issuing orders in a language that was not his own. The Bengalis had traded British colonial masters in Calcutta for new masters in Karachi. As the 1960s progressed under the military dictatorship of Field Marshal Ayub Khan, the Bengali frustration found its voice. It came in the form of a charismatic, pipe-smoking political leader with a booming baritone voice, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Mujib, leading the Awami League, realized that begging the center for fairness had failed. In 1966, he presented a radical framework known as the 6-point demand. It was a blueprint for survival. The 6 points did not initially call for independence, they called for maximum provincial autonomy. Mujib demanded that the federal government be limited only to defense and foreign affairs, with separate currencies or separate fiscal accounts for the two wings, and a paramilitary force for East Pakistan. It was a demand to keep Bengali wealth in Bengal. To the military junta in the West, the 6 points were treason. The regime's response was swift and paranoid. In 1968, they arrested Mujib and charged him with the infamous Agartala conspiracy case, accusing him of colluding with India to break up the country. The trial was a fatal miscalculation by the state. Instead of discrediting Mujib, it transformed him into the undisputed symbol of Bengali resistance. He was given the title Banga Bandhu, Friend of Bengal. Massive, unrelenting civilian uprisings swept across East Pakistan in 1969, bringing the province to a standstill and forcing the military to drop the charges and release him. The protests successfully broke the regime of Ayub Khan, who handed power over to another general, Yahya Khan. General Yahya promised a return to democracy and announced the first general elections based on the universal adult franchise in the history of Pakistan, to be held in 1970. The stage was set for a peaceful democratic transfer of power, but nature and the deep-seated arrogance of the ruling elite were about to collide in a catastrophe that would render a peaceful solution utterly impossible.